I'm standing on the shoulder of Highway 400, right where the highway cuts through the city of Barrie, 100 kilometers outside of Toronto. Now, every day, thousands of vehicles carry people and goods to the city of Barrie, as well as other communities north of Toronto.
Similar roadways, railways, waterways, and even trails have done the same job for travelers coming to this area for hundreds of years. Barrie, a destination and a gateway to all.
In 1853, there were approximately 800 people living in small wooden houses along a short stretch of Kempenfelt Bay, the first official residence of Barrie. Today, the population stands at 115,000 and climbing. As the city of Barrie celebrates its 150th birthday, we're going to discover how wars, jails, operas, devastating fires, and Olympic athletes turned a small supply depot into Canada's fastest growing city.
It's beautiful. It's the nature, it's the lake, it's everything. It's the people. The people are awesome here. They've got the little town attitude in the big city.
I believe it has much to do with the lakefront and the way the local councils over the past 25, 30 years have worked diligently to preserve it for the benefit of all the citizens of Barrie.
The waterfront. I think the waterfront's a beautiful area, especially for raising families. It's a great place.
It's on a lake, it's beautiful, it's close to Toronto, which is where most of my business is. We flew over this place on the way in and it looked like such a nice place we had to come and visit.
Since its earliest days, Barrie's story has been about transportation. In fact, just 2 trails put Barrie on the map.
The first trail came to be known as the 9-mile Portage. Now, it started right here, which is now Memorial Square in downtown Barrie.
The trail wound 9 miles northwest through the wilderness to the east branch of the Nottawasaga River, now known as Willow Creek. Then it was by canoe to the open waters of Georgian Bay, where present-day Wasaga Beach is located. The route had been used for centuries by the Algonquin Indians. Later, French and British fur traders adopted this same portage. Then came the War of 1812. The British and Americans fought fiercely over forts at Detroit and Michilimackinac on the northern shore of Lake Huron. A safe supply route to Georgian Bay was needed. Control of the Great Lakes was at stake.
John Graves Simcoe, the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, when he came through the area in 1793, he was told of the portage and knew of its existence.
300 British soldiers were brought in from the chief naval base at Kingston to hack out and widen the existing portage trail in order for military supplies to pass through. Without the trail, British claims to the lands of Western and Upper Canada were threatened. While Barrie was the southeastern terminus of the 9-mile portage, the Willow Creek Depot, or Fort Willow, served as the northwestern terminus. The fort was established to defend the portage route from attack and acted as a supply depot for forces operating in the north.
Penetanguishene was established, and you have to remember that all the supplies for Penetanguishene, to build it, to build the new ships in the harbour, including large anchors, similar to the one that can still be seen at Anchor Park in Holland Landing, all came up this way. You see Barrie here, the line of the 9-mile portage coming up.
The 9-mile portage became not only the 400 highway of its time, but also the microwave communication link.
If it weren't for places like Fort Willow and for the heroes like MacDougall and his relief expedition that came this way in 1814, Canada would probably not exist today.
And with the history come the legends, for it is said that a satchel of gold coins belonging to a dying British Army paymaster was buried somewhere near the fort, underneath the tree with the bright red leaves. And it may still be there.
Who knows? Who knows? There's a big maple tree right behind you. The reason that Barrie is located where it is today is precisely because it was the southern terminus of the 9-mile portage.
we're talking about text, graphics, and photos in the brochure.
Their objective is to reopen the historic 9-mile Portage Trail for public use come Heritage Day, September 20th, 2003 at Barrie's waterfront.
The trail, in some places, you're going to be walking on places of the Portage where people portage, whether it was a native, a voyageur, a soldier, an explorer like David Thompson, you're walking in their footsteps, and I'm excited to be able to do that, and it is bringing my history closer to home for me.
The other trail linked directly to Barrie's past is the Penetangwisheen Road, now County Road 93. It began right here at the village of Kempenfelt, which is now part of Barrie, once the site of barracks, wharves, and warehouses.
Even before the War of 1812, the inadequacies of a water route prompted the British to begin development of an overland route from Kempenfelt to the Penetangwisheen Harbor. The survey to build the Penetangwisheen Road was completed in 1811. When the war did break out, the British felt the road would be too expensive to complete and could not afford the manpower. Hence the decision to quickly widen the 9-mile portage.
After the war, the Penetangwisheen Road is eventually improved and settlement is encouraged in the area. Now the Coldwater Road in Orillia is also open, and that basically spells the end of the 9-mile portage, as it becomes quite clear that it's much easier to transport heavy goods and livestock over land than by water, especially in a canoe.
The 9-mile portage led to the erection of Barrie's first building in 1815. Barrie was not yet founded, and the building was nothing more than a cabin housing a supply superintendent. Nevertheless, the die had been cast. Barrie was on its way.
But it did set up a challenge for prominence from Kempenfelt and Tollendale, two communities that could have eclipsed and overrun Barrie forever.
Particularly the petitions from Kempenfelt claimed that because of the swamps at Barrie, no one of respectability would ever live in that community. But in the end, it probably was Edmund Lally who, although he had land at Tollendale, decided that Barrie was the best compromise position. It was between the other two, and it was developing nicely in terms of its population and houses. And the government of Toronto agreed and chose Barrie to become the future administrative centre.
Barrie now had a reason to grow. It was officially the county town. Scottish-born Robert Simpson built his first brewery in Kempenfelt in 1841. It burned to the ground in 1843, so Simpson rebuilt the brewery in Tollendale, across the bay from Kempenfelt.
And in 1848, he was burned out at Tollendale, and he was encouraged to move to Barrie, which had become the county administrative centre. And he did, and his large Simcoe steam brewery appeared on Lower Mary Street and was probably the first steam-driven industry in the town.
Simpson's Simcoe Steam Brewery, when free from fire, became one of Barrie's largest employers. Simpson had established his credentials as a determined businessman and was rewarded in 1871 by being elected the town's first mayor.
Barrie had begun to surpass its rivals in importance 30 years earlier, when in 1837 it agreed to build a courthouse and jail as a condition of becoming the county town. Today, the decommissioned jail huddles in silence overlooking the city of Barrie.
This is cell block 7.
Except for a lone security guard patrolling the cold interior, the jail is quiet, jealously guarding its past and perhaps a few secrets.
With the door leading out into the old graveyard. This is the old graveyard, and I've heard this is where some of the inmates were buried long ago in quicklime, so that there's no bodies anywhere and no grave markers of any type.
In 1840, Charles Steamboat Thompson, a local builder, steamboat, and stagecoach magnate, began construction of the jail by using limestone that was conveyed across Lake Couchiching and Simcoe from a quarry north of Orillia.
But he doubled the budget. When the courthouse opened, the roof leaked. They had to change it, the roof line, within the first couple of years. They designed the jail in a polygonal shape because that was felt to be more humanitarian for anyone who was kept inside. But for the Barrie jail, it really didn't much matter because when it finally did open, the walls were so low that the prisoners were able to get out. But they'd spent enough money, so the decision was made to simply put the prisoners in bed earlier at night so there was less risk of them escaping.
Until such time a decision is made as to the fate of the facility, the Barrie jail remains an ominous and foreboding landmark in Barrie's past. Painswick, a community that was annexed from the township of Innisfil by the city of Barrie in 1982, is really the story of one family, the Warnicas.
The area that now encompasses Big Bay Point Road and Yonge Street was originally given to a veteran of the War of 1812 in honor of his services. Now, his name was John Stam, but this gift of land turned out to be more of a problem than a blessing for Mr. Stam.
The Stams were very good friends of my third great-grandparents, and so on many of John Stam's trips to Innisfil to do settlement duties on his land here, he would bring along George and his son George to work on the property. On rowing back to Holland Landing from here, because the only way you could get back and forth from this area at that time, seeing there were no roads, was by way of the lake. The storm blew up on Lake Simcoe and the boat drifted off and almost sank out near Georgine Island, where the young George Warnica jumped overboard, stabilized the boat, and saved his father and John Stam. John, not being a swimmer, became very stressed with this and did not want to have anything to do with this land anymore, at which point he sold the land to George Warnica for £10.
Out of the bush from Kempenfelt Bay down to West Gwillimbury, the two brothers John and George Warnica hacked out a road that is now Yonge Street. They were paid $5 a mile. In the 1950s, Roy Washington Warnica subdivided the land to make way for modern homes. Today, the Warnica name continues to be a vital link to Barrie's past.
It's kind of humorous when my daughter went to Warnica School that students thought she changed her name just so she could get higher marks.
Kempenfelt, Tollendale, Painswick, and Manette's Point have long since disappeared as independent communities, becoming instead unique and important partners in Barrie's growth.
But the steam railway era charged a decade-long spat with Allendale that had one powerful businessman vowing to make grass grow in Barrie streets and pave Allendale streets with gold.
Trains were a very great part of our life. Actually, I think we lived by the trains. Such a train went up at lunchtime, and I can remember distinctly being told, you must get home at night before the 8 o'clock train goes up.
Today it may be impossible to tell where Barrie ended and Allendale began, but 150 years ago, when Barrie was incorporated as a town, the two were bitter rivals for economic supremacy, and a lot of the blame falls here. 2 kilometers of rail line separating Allendale from Barrie.
In 1853, the Ontario, Simcoe and Huron Railway was a crucial component of the local economic engine. It hauled the region's plentiful lumber south and returned with goods and tourists. The railway even operated several steamships to carry passengers, goods and mail around Lake Simcoe and Couchiching until a rail link was completed. It was during that period the railway's general manager, Frederick Cumberland, was responsible for seeing that a rail line extended to Lake Huron up from York, now Toronto.
He sent out surveyors and geologists like Sanford Fleming, who decided that the most economical route from Allendale was to go straight west and then north, which left Barrie out of the loop.
Heated battles ensued between Cumberland council members and residents. Barrie was fighting mad. They wanted a railway.